before we get officially started. Anyway, I certainly appreciate you doing this, sir.
Oh no, happy to help, man. Happy to
Good,
help.
good deal. Good deal. Okay, we will wait till it's officially 7 to start the little deal there. I've got my background kind of blurred because I have some gear on the floor and that kind of stuff.
I
But
understand.
you know, just how life is. And we may get some live questions and answers. We may not. We'll see. But
Okay,
anyway,
very good.
I'll go ahead and get started. Hey, welcome everybody. This is Craig from the Thenaturalmedic Adventures. I've got Ray here from the Texas Survival School and Hike a Lot. He is joining us this week. We definitely appreciate him being here, and we're going to talk for the next little bit about kind of getting prepared for outdoor adventures. We're not really picking anything in particular. You know, he and I probably have pretty similar adventures that we do, hiking, backpacking, that kind of stuff. I might be doing some different things that he doesn't do, but he maybe does do some things that I don't do as much. So, but anyway, we're just kind of trying to get you a baseline for, you know, how to prepare yourself and what types of things, you need to be ready for when you get out there enjoying the outdoors. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or an expert, I think there's something you'll definitely learn here. So thanks for joining. You can ask us questions. I can answer those. We'll answer those as we get to them if we have time. Otherwise, we'll do it at the end. So I've got a list of questions over here. So you'll be looking on the other screen here. That's where the questions are. So Ray, welcome. Thanks for doing this again. And I've read your bio. I know you. You don't live that far from me, about 45 minutes or so. But kind of tell the audience kind of a little background about yourself and what got you into this. This whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yep, absolutely. And thanks, Craig, for having me on here. This will be an interesting little afternoon for us all here. So, like I said, I'm Ray McKee. I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth market now for about 12 years. I've spent the bulk of the last 25 years or so in larger metropolitan areas, but I grew up out in the sticks, and we do intros at my survival school, and I always joke that I was raised feral. I wasn't. I was dangerously close to being feral. We lived in one of the larger counties with one of the smaller populations back in South Carolina, and so spent the bulk of my time, as a kid out in the woods. It was, hunting and fishing and just tromping through the woods and, floating rivers in canoes and, just kind of being a typical boy, doing as much as you could to stay out of trouble. But I moved into the cities, figured out pretty fast that it was claustrophobic for me. Moved into the cities for my actual job. But nature was kind of always my escape. That was my quiet place. And so I was always running for an avenue to get back out into somewhere. And shortly after I moved to Dallas, I stumbled on the survival school, as Texas Survival School. That's been, let's see, I moved here in 12. So I've been with them now. School's 10 years old, so I've been with them now for about 9.5 years. So I was here for a couple years before I found it, not too terribly long. But it happened to be close to the house, and went out for a class and loved it, and quite honestly just never left. And at this point, I co-own it with the original founder of the school. And then we constantly had, it was kind of a mixed bag of folks that would come through the classes. We'd get hunters and fishers and, backpackers that got lost. We'd get the Boy Scouts. We'd get the preppers. We would get the honey, you're going to die if you get lost in the woods, or so you're going to go take this class. Or you get the moms and dads bringing their kids out because the kids love watching Naked and Afraid or Alone or something like that. And sometimes it wasn't mom or dad's cup of tea, but the kids were all into it. So stumbled on the school, just never left. But we kept getting this large swath of people who were hikers and backpackers who'd gotten lost, and I enjoyed that piece of it. And so I kind of made the decision to do a standalone company that was just purely focused on taking hikers and making them into backpackers and helping people make that transition, because I constantly had people saying that, oh, I would love to do that. I love hiking. I'm just not comfortable making the leap to overnight backpacking. So tried to give them an
Mhm.
outlet to make that transition too. But I do less of the hunting, fishing stuff now. At some point, I guess probably about 10 or 12 years ago, I figured out that more often than not, it wasn't the actual act of hunting that I was enjoying. It was just the being out in nature and enjoying the peace and tranquility of it. And that's when I really dove more into the hiking, backpacking side of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You kind of went ahead into the second question already. What size, I guess, your typical class that you offer? Like,
For the survival school, they're a good bit bigger than what they are with the hiking stuff. The hiking stuff, I've found that it seems to be a lot more, since this is stuff that a lot of people don't know, and it's more of, I intentionally kind of hold those around, 6, 8, 10 people tops on the hiking side of the world. For the survival school, it really depends on the class. We have a variety of classes out there. Probably one of our more popular ones, honestly, is the basic survival class, which is really based around that 72 hours. It's on the high end of when people are lost, if you're lost in the woods. The vast majority of people are picked up in the first 24 hours. The overwhelming majority of what's left is picked up in 48. And by the time you get 72 hours, most people are found. So that first class is really sort of based around, that keeping you hydrated, keeping you warm, some situationally appropriate first aid. There's some land navigation, some signaling, sheltering, that type of thing. Just the basic blocking and tackling. And that runs from like a Friday through a Sunday. Those classes are much bigger. Those typically run anywhere from probably 40 to 60 people. And then as you move up through the progression, you move more into a primitive skills perspective, and the classes obviously get smaller. We do kind of our intermediate class. We do those a few times a year, and we're starting to layer in the primitive stuff. And then we move up to advanced class, which now adds an additional day where you're really out there with just a knife. You get a pot, a knife, a cordage, you get a tarp, a combustion tool, usually a ferro rod, and then just a little bit of food for 4 days. Um,
mhm.
we do those at a different location. Each time we move to classes, they get more austere. Those classes, they're anywhere from, a half dozen people to 20 on the high end. And then our knife only class, I think the biggest we've ever had, and that's a 5-day class. And it is legit just a knife and whatever clothes you have on your back. Those are 10 tops normally. But then we do other classes, like we do CPR certification, wilderness first aid certification. We do like wild edible classes. We've got a gentleman from the Houston area, Merriweather, for anybody who's familiar with him. He comes in and teaches our edible classes. Those we cap off at 15, 16 people, somewhere in that neighborhood. Just those
Okay,
kind of smaller one-off classes.
gotcha.
But they're pretty good size. It's fun. We do classes. Most of the classes run from like September through May. We run kind of like on a traditional school year.
Okay, all right.
We do one-off stuff during the summer, but that's all.
So I mean, you have a pretty busy schedule with that. I mean, are you planning to expand that at
Very
all,
much.
or?
We're constantly looking for stuff. We've got a cadre of about a dozen instructors, give or take.
Hmm.
The more people we have, obviously, the more stuff we can push through, and the bigger we can let the classes get. So it's grown very organically. We're constantly looking for new content to add for people, and a lot of that's just it's a result of students saying, "Oh, I would love to know more about this." We've an attempt over the last year and a half. I always try to pick kind of a different avenue to focus on from one year to the next. Last year, we intentionally started layering in, well, we layered it in this year. We did all the prep work last year as far as getting ready to do like the CPR, the wilderness first aid certifications, and stop the bleed and all that fun stuff. But then this year went in with, let's see, we added like a campfire cooking class. We added fishing classes. So we're always trying to like broaden. We added a weekend long land navigation class too, which people had been clamoring for the longest time. And that was an awesome class. So we're
Right.
constantly broadening the breadth of the classes. We don't do those as often. We base it entirely on demand. But then we're also we're kind of just so we're based out of the DFW market, but all of our classes, as you move through them, it's always a different location, and everything's kind of gone from here north. So we do classes here in DFW, and then we do a handful of classes up on the in the Oklahoma area on some of our more advanced classes. But we did kind of just lock down a spot in the Texas Hill Country that we'll probably be announcing and making public here in the next. I think we're back down there doing some prep work in end of July, so we'll start doing classes out there in the fall.
Okay.
We finally gotten big enough now. We pull enough people from down there. We've gotten big enough as far as the number of instructors that we can try to run 2 locations in parallel.
Right. That's good. That's good. That's a good good expansion there. So with that in mind, I mean, you're following the school year thing. So, during the summer, as most of us, the kids are out during the summertime, or, depending on some person's job, they might have more time in the summer. But of course, for those of us in the South, especially, in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, Louisiana, et cetera, the Southern U.S., that's when the weather is starting to get uncomfortable. It's getting,
Very much so.
Yeah. So what kind of tips can you offer quickly, just for those of us that are, that because of, whatever reason we're having to start, let's say Memorial Day weekend is like our first time, to get out there and experience outdoor adventure. What would you say?
Absolutely. Everyone sort of gets sucked into this. There's this, at least on the survival side, there's this rule of threes that everyone sort of always preaches, and it's the 3 minutes without air, the 3 days without water, the 3 weeks without food. I'll be honest, the 3 days without water in Texas is garbage during the summer.
Exactly.
You may physically be alive at the end of day 3, but you're not really
Right.
functional at the end of day 1. If you've never
Yeah.
actually, been admitted to the hospital for dehydration, you probably don't know what real dehydration is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very real thing. For me, water's king. Obviously, you want to minimize as much of the exposure to the shade and to the sun as you can. I go hiking still during the summer. I'm out a lot. I start at the crack of dawn, if not earlier, and I try to be done by lunchtime. So all of my activities, I'll start super early and wrap up early, and then I just sort of go in hibernation during the afternoons, and I may pop back up and do more stuff in the evenings. But for me, it's all about getting it done as early as possible. Um, we do we've always flirted with doing classes during the summer at the survival school, and while we're out, even though we're not doing classes, we're constantly out in it. Like I said, we're going down to the hill country at the end of July, and we'll be out there
Mm-hmm.
for 4 days.
Sure.
So we're constantly out in it doing it, but we're just pounding water, and that's always been our downfall with doing classes during the summer months, because theoretically, most of the students are adults. They should be able to be responsible enough to drink enough water. And anytime we've ever done classes, you'll see people that are getting behind the hydration 8 ball, and they're just not catching up. And you start telling people, hey, you need to be drinking more. You're clearly getting dehydrated. No, I'm drinking. I
Right.
promise I'm hydrated. And it's a Mountain Dew, or it's a Red Bull, or
Sure.
it's not the stuff we need to be putting in our stomachs.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, that's the biggest thing. Minimize the exposure during the hottest parts of the day. Ease yourself into it, get acclimated to. Don't decide that I'm going to go from having been sitting on the couch for the last 9 months to I'm going to go hike down the Grand Canyon. Ease yourself into it, build
Exactly.
yourself up to it. But for me, it's water, 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 water.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the key, and I think, in addition
It
to
is. It is.
what you said, the taking advantage of the shade, going in those cooler
Very much
times
so.
of the day. That's very, yeah, that's very good advice. And of course, I never really thought about it
We did
until.
a
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say we did a class. We did a private class for it was a singles hiking group out of Austin. It's been several
Hmm.
years ago, and if you come to our normal survival class, we have like a list of stuff that we ask you to bring, and the whole thing is structured around it. And we were kind of going back and forth on this because it was a little bit of a different format,
Hmm.
and because it was all it was specifically a day hiking group. They were
Okay.
just kind of the weekend hiker, not really backpacking ish. And so they always ask, they're like, hey, what do we need to bring? And we decided we'll do it a little bit differently. We're going to teach the entire class from the trail. And we told people, just bring what you normally hike with.
Right.
And which is always my pet peeve because, it's the hiker that typically gets in trouble, not necessarily the backpacker. The backpacker is more often than not prepared to be spending the night out there. They may still get turned
Right.
around, but they're at least more they're more prepared to spend the night. But we
Hmm.
had we had several people show up with just next to nothing. You roll up out there and you've got a hair scrunchie, which obviously I don't need. A pack of chewing gum and some chapstick and a water bottle
Right.
and a hairbrush, and you're off for the day. And it's that person that gets in trouble. And we were bringing up several scenarios, and we had a quote that stuck in our head from one of the ladies. We're sitting there talking about, okay, a storm's coming in. Now, what are you going to do? And we're over there setting up our little shelter. Well, I'm going to get in there with you. Well, no, you're not. There's not room in there for you and me. Well, somebody has to take care of me. And that one quote, the someone has to take care of me, it stuck in my head. And actually, Eric, the other instructor that was there, it really resonated with both of us because that's a lot of people's attitude that, somebody has to be responsible for me. I'm not. So someone else has to take care of me. And that's something we always constantly reiterate with people is, when we go out, we just need to be prepared to take care of us and ourselves and those people that are with us. If I take
Right.
my wife and son out, I expect them to be prepared for themselves, but I prepare for them as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's always good to have extra whatever if
Hmm.
possible. But I mean, me being a paramedic and just recently getting back into EMS from coming from a more of an urgent care
Sure.
setting. I mean, I have to I have to think about it every day. People are, and I'm not faulting these people for anything, but they're calling for the oddest things sometimes, Ray. I mean, I know you know this
Oh, sure.
because we talk on Facebook a lot, and I tell you about some of my,
Sure.
details of some of my calls and stuff. But I mean,
Sure.
that's kind of the attitude of the general public. I think a lot is, you know, I don't really have to take a responsibility for myself because somebody
Yeah.
else,
Yep.
especially if you're going to probably
Very
going to one
much
of
so.
your classes. I can imagine some of the students' attitudes of going to the class. Well, look, I'm going here to teach this, so the instructor is going to take care of me. They're going to teach me how to do this, and they're going to, if I don't
Sure.
have the right
Sure.
stuff, they're going to they're going to
Yep.
provide for me, and that's not
And
necessarily,
sure.
how it should be.
And we actually really try to let people at the class, like we always try to tell people, we want them to fail in a controlled environment. We want people to come out there and test the stuff that they think that they know how to use. The stuff that you've seen 10,000 YouTube videos on and you're convinced is going to work until you actually put it in play in the field. Um, so we let people fail. We are very much prepped to take care of people while they're out there. It's the
Mhm.
ones that aren't in class that are just, they've decided to venture into the woods. COVID for, you know, if you had to give a pro out of COVID, it has definitely introduced a lot of people into the outdoors that historically just had not been out there. I think it was the cabin fever from the isolation and then our lovely social distancing. All of a sudden now, over the last few years, you have a ton more people in state parks and federal parks that, just typically hadn't been in there. People have found
Mhm.
a new hobby and a new love of something that they can enjoy, and they've
Mhm.
continued to do that. But the con of it is, it's also a lot of people that this is newer experiences for them. And as long as they're on the trail and at the campground, it's perfectly fine normally.
Mhm.
But normal's it's always subjective. What's going to happen when something else goes awry,
Right.
and that's when they get in trouble. And so it's pushed a lot of people out there that while they're good while they're sitting at the campground and they're good while they're on that immediate trail, if anything goes awry, it's a lot of people getting in trouble, and that's the piece that worries me. And it's the reason we've been as busy as we have with the school. I think part of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that still, I won't say irks me, but it kind of irks me when I go on the trails, not even in the summer necessarily, but when it's starting to get warm, like right now in May, or like at the end of our hot season, like in September, October, and I see people on the trail with like nothing.
Oh,
They have
absolutely,
no, they
absolutely,
have
and it happens
no
all the
water.
time.
They have, yeah, no water, no extra supplies, no nothing.
Sure.
So kind of with that in mind about
Mhm.
supplies, I mean, can you tell us some items that you always carry on, any outdoor adventure? What's your essential items that you
Oh,
take?
sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you move through, like if a person were to like move through our classes at the school, you figure out pretty fast that you really don't have to have a ton of stuff to be comfortable.
Right.
So my kit's smaller than probably what a lot of stuff could be, would be. But then at the same time, it's more than most people carry. Anytime I would get on people for not carrying stuff out there, the constant argument was always, I'm not carrying a bunch of stuff on the trail. The trail is marked. I have my phone, which drives me crazy. I don't have to carry a bunch of stuff. And those are the ones that
Hmm.
get in trouble. So what I normally carry, it's a little bit of a hybrid. So on the survival front, you have the 10 C's of survivability, which was kind of popularized by Dave Canterbury. I think it was based off of like the 10 essentials of scouting from like 100 years ago or whatever it was. It's
Right.
old, and
Yeah.
he kind of modified it and commercialized it and marketed it really well. But it's sort of a hybrid between it and then the 10 essentials of hiking that you can kind of pick up everywhere. So it's kind of an amalgamation between the two. Without fail, I never leave the house to go out in the woods without a real compass. And by a real compass, I mean something that's not on a keychain and not on a carabiner. It has actual degrees
Sure.
on it that I can shoot like a true azimuth bearing
Right.
and know exactly that I'm going that direction. I'm always out there with a water filter. I've always got a simple way to make fire. I have some kind of cover. A lot of times it's just a poncho, but it's still something that I can make a small shelter and get underneath. Um, a little bit of cordage. I'm not going out there with 500 foot of rope, but just enough to kind of make a quick shelter and do some
Right.
basic blocking and tackling. And then some kind of water container if I need that in conjunction with my filtering system.
Hmm.
A little bit of first aid. I'm not like hauling out on backpacking trips or hiking trips like a massive IFAC or something, but I carry enough to cover all of the bases because it drives me crazy. You see like the thru hikers like, oh, what's in your first aid kit? Well, I have moleskin and 3 ibuprofen. Okay, that to me is not first aid. Um, but so it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything. I can say that I can sleep and live very comfortably. I call it my tiny big kit. It's just a little drop leg bag that's about the size of a softball, and everything
Hmm.
fits in it. It has a little metal cup in there that I can boil water in. There's a water filter in there. There's a collapsible water bag. There's a whole fire kit in there. There's a poncho on it. It's got a lot in there. Um, and it's enough. Like, so normally during the summer, that's what I use. When it gets winter time, because I want to add extra layers of clothing, I'll move the gear out of it and into just like a backpack so that I can throw in like a puffy and a hat and gloves and all that fun stuff. But it's mostly
Right.
then just about adding layers. There's a little
Sure.
emergency blanket in there, but just a normal blocking and tackling.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't in the South here. We don't really need layers during the summertime. Maybe a rain
No,
jacket would probably be plenty.
yeah,
If it gets a little cool, we could
yeah,
throw a rain jacket on. We got a little reflective,
sure,
body heat
sure,
there. Not a big deal. But
yep.
yeah, yeah, definitely
I
in
always
the
I always tell people here in Texas
mhm.
we don't have seasons. We have summer and not summer.
Yeah,
Um, and so
that's
it
accurate.
just, it's all just
That's
varying degrees of warm.
right. Right. That's exactly true. When we do have those, those few days, maybe in the late fall, winter months, like, I think you and I were planning on going to Oklahoma
Sure,
back in
sure.
around Thanksgiving time, and it like had to a kind of a weird
Yep.
freeze where it was
Mm,
technically in Oklahoma, but it's right across the border from Texas, so we'll call it Texas as well.
sure, sure.
This whole area had a big freeze, around Christmas,
Mm,
Thanksgiving time last year, and so that was kind of unusual. But yeah, normally we don't need all that stuff, during the majority of the year.
no, no. And those cold times, that's always my favorite time to go. I love the
Oh, me
cold
too.
weather sleeping and the cold weather hiking, and I did Eagle Rock up in Arkansas. I guess it was last year January, so January 22, and I think it was
Hmm.
high teens, low 20s at night. during the day it got up to just above freezing, and it was perfect. I had just an absolute ball out there.
Yeah.
That's the time I enjoy going.
Yeah. I think that was right after I went. That's like maybe the first time we started talking on one of the Facebook groups, I think.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Because I had gone in December, like on Christmas weekend in 2021. And it was an interesting trip for sure.
Yep, without a doubt.
So, you mentioned that about, all these people coming to the outdoors, and we're kind of focusing that on kind of more, focusing more on, forgive the term newbies, but that's what, we're focusing on as newbies. Sure. So how can these people that are coming, to the outdoors, how can they enjoy the outdoors and also be a good steward of, of the environment and now all these different outdoor recreation places? Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
The easy answer for the good steward, we all subscribe to that leave no trace code of ethics that everyone kind of generally, buys into. I do kind of fall in the middle of it. And some people go completely to like one extreme. I was on one of the groups a while back and was watching people, having this just heated argument over what do you do with your toothpaste spit after you brushed your teeth. And like it was this, there must have been 100 messages in this thread, and I was just astounded. I'm like, wow, I'm not that over the top. No, I'm not there chopping trees down and, leaving trash all over the place. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to leave it in a better space than the way I found it. And that's always my mission when I go out. Leave it better than when I found it. Yeah. And it, but some people definitely go to an extreme, stance with that stuff of, don't yell at me because we're not walking in a single file line and we've accidentally widened the trail by a half step somewhere.
Sure.
So I think as long as you're doing better today than you did yesterday and you're leaving it better than you found it, we're all moving in the right direction. But as far as, getting out and enjoying it, I honestly think one of the biggest things is getting educated and being prepared to go out into it so that you can go out with not just confidence, but an adequate level of confidence. Because I see a lot of confident people that go out there and then when gear breaks or injuries happen, we figure out pretty fast that it's more of maybe I was a little more overconfident than what I should have been. Or when you start hoofing up the hill with, the pack on your back.
That never happens, surely.
No, this never happens. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
So just having that realistic expectation with everything. And then that comes with, actual trail miles and getting out there and doing it and
absolutely.
all that fun stuff. And my wife, the first trip she went with me on an overnighter, it wasn't anything long. I'd actually day hiked the trail before myself. And before I would take her out there, I made her go do shakedown hikes with her bag until she could hike in the course of a day it was well more than what we were going to be hiking that day. And it took her probably 6 or 8 shakedown hikes before she was comfortable doing it. And after it was all over, she thanked me for doing it. She was annoyed that I kept making her do shakedowns. It would take her on the overnighter, but I wanted to be sure she was actually ready to do it because learning when you can, call an Uber to come get you is far easier than learning when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have to come out of the woods on your own fruition.
Right.
Or off of an airlift. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But the biggest thing is just you're getting educated so you actually have a accurate sense of confidence.
Yeah. I mean, baby steps. I mean, like you and I both like to go to Arkansas, and there's definitely trails that are considered, quote unquote beginner trails, and some that are like Eagle Rock Loop. They're a little more advanced. I wouldn't necessarily call it an expert trail, Eagle Rock Loop, for example, but it's, there's a lot more challenges on that trail due to length and different things that you have to encounter.
Sure.
And so, I agree with you. The best way is to kind of, ease into it instead of trying to jump off and, like we mentioned earlier, going into the Grand Canyon on your very first hiking trip and trying to cross across. That's probably aiming a little too high, I think, for your first trip. I mean, you can build up to that, of course,
Sure. Absolutely.
Most anything can be done out there with the right preparation, the right training, education, that kind of stuff,
Yep.
especially nowadays.
Yes,
Um,
very much so.
yeah. And you mentioned people are relying on their phone and things like
Sure.
that. But I mean, we still, I mean, in every aspect of our life, we really can't get away from technology. And technology, to an extent, as long as we don't rely on it fully, can make our
Sure.
lives easier or whatever. So, what would you say is your favorite technological piece of gear or whatever that you take on?
That, that's an easy answer, and it is
Okay.
not my cell phone. I
Okay.
keep my cell phone out there for navigation. I take pictures with it. Part of me enjoying getting out is getting away from technology and unplugging. But it's an easy answer because it's Rhonda. Everyone's like, who's Rhonda? Okay, so it's my emergency beacon.
Okay.
Because it has made, I do so many trips out where I'm not around a phone signal, and just the amount of, because my wife can see exactly where I am, the amount of mental peace that it has given her that
Hmm.
I'm not dead has made it far easier for me to take more trips. There'd be a lot of time I'd get in the car on Sunday night and start heading back to the house, and you finally get a signaling call and say, "Well, I'm glad you're not dead." The anxiety that having that beacon and her being able to see the breadcrumb droppings, um, it's just tenfold. Been I would pay 10 times what I do for it just for her having that peace of mind. And I joke
Right.
that it's Rhonda because when we set it up in the application, because it sends text messages and emails, you can name it.
Hmm.
And so in my head, I'm like, if I have to push the button, I need help. So it's help me, Rhonda. So when the
Oh well.
emails come out and the text
Okay.
messages come out, they all say from Rhonda. And the
Okay.
first time one of the notifications went to my mom, she's like, "Who's Rhonda?" Don't worry
Right.
about it; it'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, so for me, it's Rhonda easily.
And is that one of the Garmin InReach devices, or which one do you?
It's it is. I actually carry the Spot Gen 4 because
Okay,
for me,
that's
I
right.
wasn't necessarily concerned with the two-way communication. I
Okay,
just wanted her to be
sure.
able to see where I was, and if I absolutely had to need help, just push the button and let it ride. It wasn't. We weren't really concerned with the two-way, and I like a lot of the other devices. I think any of them are good. I'm really quite enamored with the Motorola Defy that just came out, and I may
Hmm.
convert to it. I'm liking what I'm seeing with it. I think they just released it at the beginning of May.
Okay,
It's pretty slick. I haven't picked one up yet, but I might move to it. Um,
okay,
they have a Defy that's the phone, but then they have a Defy that's a dongle that just Bluetooths over to your phone. It looks like a little key
hmm,
fob. It basically
okay.
makes your phone a sat phone, which is really slick. So I'm
Oh, it's like we lost him. Oh. Um. Well, perhaps he'll be back. I'm not sure what happened, but anyway, yeah. Just carrying on with that, I'll grab my device that I use. My favorite piece of technology. So y'all can see it. It's the Garmin InReach. This is the first InReach. I put my headphones back on so I can hear. In case he does come back on. Um, the Garmin InReach device here. Probably can't see it because I got the screen blurred. Let me see if I can unblur the screen here. Okay. Pardon my mess behind me. Okay. So Garmin InReach right here. This device, basically, it's kind of like a satellite phone in a way. It doesn't make phone calls, but it does send two-way communication. You have to subscribe to it just like you would any other communications device. You have to be on a plan that allows you to send so many messages or what have you. This is the one that I use, and I like it. He uses a different one, and that's okay. Let's see what happened to him. And let me check my phone. Maybe he's dropped off for some reason. I'm not sure. So pardon me just a minute. Hmm. Well, anyway, let's keep rolling through the questions here that I had for him. So a place that I um, haven't gone to yet that I would like to go to, and that would be, um, what is the name of that place? I just now lost the thought of it. Isle Royale. Sorry, I had a bit of a little brain smear there. Isle Royale is definitely a place that I want to go to. It's located, if you're not familiar with that, it's a national park you have to get to by boat or by seaplane only. It's in the middle of Lake Superior, almost in Canada. And it kind of has, because of its isolation, it has its own little ecosystem, and you can get out there. Oh, there he goes. He's back. Looks like.
Are you there with me, Craig?
Hey, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, I am back. Sorry about that. My dear friends at Apple apparently heard me trash talking using technology,
Oh,
so they were kind enough to shut me down.
gotcha.
Let me get my headset to connect here.
Okay. We've lost your video for a second too.
I know.
There you are. Okay. Well.
Yeah, no, it told me my phone overheated.
Oh gosh. Well, we're not going to go too much longer. We're almost through this, so hopefully we can.
All right, hang on. Just give me
keep
like
it
1
cool.
second here to reconnect my. Oh no, I turned the AC on in the car now, so let me just swap headsets real fast.
Sure. Well, we were talking about kind of our dream vacation or dream destination we'd like to go to. That was the next question. And so I was saying one that is kind of in the forefront of my mind. I mean, yes, I'd love to go to Iceland or someplace exotic like that.
Sure.
But I mean, in the U.S., I'm thinking Isle Royale would be a really cool place.
Yeah.
It's remote enough that, you know, it's a little bit of a challenge to get there. Once you get there, you're kind of there. And
Sure.
It's only open during certain times of the year. I think it's only open when it's not icy in Lake Superior, and it's so isolated that it has its own like unique ecosystem. So that's really would be a cool thing to check out, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. So what would be your, you know, dream outdoor adventure place that if you could go anywhere?
I would love to do John Muir, but given that I grew up on the East Coast, kind of like in the foothills of the Appalachian Trail, I've always wanted to go do it. I've never felt like I could take 5 or 6 months off of life and commitments and all that fun stuff to go do it. So kind of in the back of my head, I'm like, maybe it's a retirement trip one day,
right?
Or when the kid gets out of college or off to college, maybe I'll venture out. But that one's kind of always been there. I've kicked myself for when I lived there not taking it in, at least in sections. And I just, there was always something else to do, and so that was kind of always been on the docket. But if I had to pick one, it'd be somewhere between those two.
Yeah, I got you. That'd definitely be a cool trail to do. I'm not sure the length of that one. Is that like 500 something miles or something?
The Appalachian Trail.
Oh, you said I thought you said the John Muir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, no, that was the first one I threw out there, but it would be somewhere between the two of them.
I see.
The AT and
I see.
John Muir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
you could definitely get Muir done pretty quickly, but because it's not that long. But it is just gorgeous up there, that area of the country.
Oh yeah. Well, you came from the Carolinas, so you were relatively close. Have you ever been on the Appalachian Trail and done any of it?
Very little, and that's what I've always kicked myself for not taking more opportunities to go enjoy it. I kind of grew up like right in the foothills of it all, and spent a lot of time in the woods and all that fun stuff, and I love that area of the country. It's just I never unplugged enough from life to actually go out and spend substantial time on it, and it's always been a regret. One day.
Same. At one point I lived briefly in Connecticut, and I was
Okay.
and I was in the northwest corner, and I was like, literally, the Appalachian Trail went right through that particular township. So, I never set foot on it the entire time I was there, and that was, one of those things. I kind of, like you said, kick myself. I kind of kick myself when I think about that from time to time.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and I looked it up. The John Muir Trail is 213.7 miles, but it has an elevation gain of 47,000 feet. So that's that's a far cry from that. Same here, man. I mean, that's
especially down here at sea level that we are here in Texas.
Yeah, we're barely above sea level in majority of Texas, and that's going to kick our butts for sure. Let's look at some other questions here. So, just keeping that in mind and kind of talking about the new places. I mean, how do you, Ray, figure out, like, I'm going to go to this new place? What's your research process for figuring out, the ins and outs of that new place?
I find new trails all the time. I do. I'm not a fan of social media, but I do it for the schools.
Sure.
Which is why I don't really have like a personal page. I find new trails all the time through it or through something like All Trails, which, it's good for telling you what all's around there. I don't know that they're all that accurate, but they're good. I do a ton of just internet research, like getting into some of the forums, especially if it's a trail that's big enough to have its own groups and pages. Just because you get so much actual intel there, as far as what the trail conditions are and traffic and things to be worried about, what do the parking areas look like. So I try to do all of that sort of normal reconnaissance piece, but as part of my communication plan, because every time I go out, I leave a trail map for my wife on the refrigerator at home, and it's got all right, if I'm parked here, this is the way I'm going. If I'm parked here, I'm going this way, and here's where I'm planning on camping, and here's my license plate numbers, and here's the telephone number for the local police department and search and rescue and ranger stations, all that stuff. But as part of the process of filling all of that out, one of the things I'm always doing is looking for the stuff that's not on the trail map, because I do prefer to do compass-based land navigation instead of the app on my phone. I just feel like I'm way more in touch with the land and nature doing it that way. And it is, I'm always looking for the stuff that's not on the trail map. So it's that stuff that's on the outside perimeters. And so sort of handrails and backstops and bailout routes of, all right, if I've gone this far and I run into this, I've gone too far. Or if I get blind lost and I'm on this leg of the trail, I know I can go this way and hit this thing. And it just, that piece of it gives me a lot of comfort while I'm out and about. And the fact that, regardless of what's going on, the compass and the map are in my pocket. I may not have anything else with me, but those two items are in my pocket. Because what I don't want to do is, step off the trail to go to the restroom or something and then be the statistic that they're out there looking for.
Right.
So it's I do a lot of that, that what's around me research, because that's the piece that at that point gives me the peace of mind. Because I know if I step out and I'm on this leg, if worst case scenario, it may stink going from A to B, but I know if I go that way, I'm going to hit civilization. And that's usually my biggest concern when I'm researching an area.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'm pretty much doing the same things. I'm just doing a lot of internet research and just kind of digging in and seeing what's kind of in the area, so I can kind of get a feel of how that fits into the general landscape as a whole.
Yep, absolutely.
And with that in mind, I mean, what would you say right now is your favorite trail or area to go to as far as hiking goes?
Growing up in kind of the foothills in the Carolinas, I love the Ouachitas here, that kind of, through Arkansas and Oklahoma. They're both close enough to be pretty easily accessible from North Texas. And to me, it's the first place that I've found that feels like what I grew up in, as far as like the way it looks and, the animals and the plants and the topography. Like, to me, it always looks like home. So, and being able to sneak off in there in a 4 or 5 hour drive and be right in the throes of it all, for me, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
So I try to sneak off up there as much as I can.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would agree with you. I mean, that's the closest like kind of getaway place to where we live here in North Texas. And then of course, even when I lived further east in East Texas and in the so-called Arklatex, that was, still a pretty good jump off, place as well. We still got you? We lose you.
There you are again. Can you hear me, Craig?
Yep. Lost your video again, but I can hear something on that end. There we go.
Got it.
All right. Now we got a little bit of echo.
Huh.
Let me check these settings real quick. Test.
I can hear you fine.
Controversial question again. Tent versus a hammock. What do you feel about that? Can you hear me?
I'm not getting your audio now, Craig.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you now. Yes.
Okay, so controversial question: tent versus hammock. What is best?
That's funny. So, I'll be honest. I'm not a tent camper.
Yeah.
I will hammock a lot during the summer. I love the hammock. I have a bridge hammock, so I lay flat, get plenty of air circulation. It's the cooler way for me to do it during the summer. Wintertime, I'm pretty much just a tarp. I'll throw up a tarp, or I'll just normally just sort of straight cowboy camp. I'll throw up a tarp if I'm worried about it, being a little extra windy, or if I think there's going to be any precipitation. But for the most part, it's a hammock during the summer, and it's a tarp during the winter.
Okay.
But I will sleep in a tent if my wife carries it.
Hey, there you go. That's fair. Yeah, I feel I'm the opposite. I just haven't had a whole lot of experience with hammocks. I mean, I tried last time I attempted the Eagle Rock Loop, and I got ill on it. I had I had probably the wrong size hammock. It was a little too short. Well, per Texas DPS, I'm 6'2". I don't think I'm quite 6'2", but I'm a little bit tall for that hammock, and it just wasn't comfortable. I didn't bring enough cover, and etc. So I'm not gonna give it up.
They do take some getting used to.
Yeah.
They take some getting used to.
I mean, the nice thing, I guess, about a tent is that the fact you can set it up, put your bedding out, and you're good to go for the most part.
Sure.
It's simple.
Sure.
It's simple. And I think hammocking, like you said, requires a little bit more finesse as far as how you're, got to be a little bit more careful about how you do things.
I love the fact that it doesn't matter what the ground looks like when I set it up, though.
Yeah, you can definitely get in some really interesting places really easily that a tent would never go in. And I know you teach a survival class, so people. We're not going to talk about Rambo knives, but I'm thinking like commercial kits. Like I have a commercial kit down here. Let me show you. I just picked up because I just think they're neat. Like I've got just like the Bear Grylls, survival kit. Is this thing worth having, or is it worth anything in your opinion?
It depends on what you paid for it, man. Depends on what you paid for it.
I think I paid like $20 for it.
Okay.
And it's got. Let me see. I don't even know what's in it. It's got some cordage. It's got like a little Gerber knife, of course, because it's Gerber deal. It's got a little survival booklet. Fire starter. Just some basic waterproof bag to carry all the stuff in, a whistle, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So we have a lot of people come out to classes, and they'll come out with little kit stuff that they bought like that, or the ones I like even more are the ones that pull the bug out bag out of the back of the truck. That I've been driving this around for 3 years. I'm going to use this,
right? And
then they've broken 5 pieces of it by lunchtime on Saturday. Mm-hmm. More often than not, there are good things out there.
Sure.
But you kind of have to be selective finding them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
I can find a knife today that is great, but then 6 months from now they change where they're getting the metal from, and they change some of their heat treating, and all of a sudden it's a garbage knife 6 months from now that has the
Sure.
exact same look and name to it. So some of that stuff just takes getting to know the gear. I really subscribe much more toward the let me get the pieces that I know work and let me assemble it myself. And that same thing goes for my first aid kit. Like I don't not a real big fan of buying a first aid kit. I'd rather compile the pieces myself that
Yeah.
one I know how
Yeah.
to use, and two
Mm-hmm.
aren't concerned with like the piece count, because usually it's 2% of stuff that's usable and 98% of stuff that's it's pieces of band-aids that I don't really care about anyway. That's not going to stick when I get wet anyway. So
Right. Right. You got 500 different types of band-aids in a commercial kit sometimes. And it's like
exactly.
I just need like some regular band-aids and I'm good. I can pretty much adapt.
Yeah, yeah,
So that pretty much answers the second question, or the next question, which was what's in your first aid kit. I mean, you
yeah.
pretty much, and I agree with you as a paramedic. I mean, we even on the ambulance, we have a lot of stuff,
Oh yeah,
but we
certainly.
but we can't possibly have
You
a
can't carry.
medicine
Yeah,
or an intervention that's going to solve every single problem. And I think
correct, correct.
the same approach is appropriate in the outdoors. You want to try to keep it as
Very
basic as
much so.
possible
Yeah,
to
yeah,
keep everything that you need for the majority of what you're going to deal with. Cuts,
sure,
scrapes, maybe some burns, and maybe some medicine for allergic reaction or pain like
yeah,
Aleve or
yeah,
Tylenol or whatever, and you're probably going to be
sure.
good. You know.
I do. Mine's pretty scaled down. Like it does change based on the time of year and how many people are going with me, because it drives me nuts people not having stuff.
Right.
I don't consider it to be part of my first aid kit, but I religiously every day carry a tourniquet. It's one of the few unitaskers that I carry.
Yeah.
Um, if I'm backpacking, it's ace wrap, it's gauze, because I can do a lot with both of those. I keep a
Absolutely.
couple foot of Lucatape on my trekking poles, and that's
Hmm.
my band-aids. It's
Right.
my medical tape, it's my splinting, it's my fill in the blank. I mean, that's my moleskin, my blister prevention or treatment. Um, those three items go a long way. I carry, a handful of like antiseptic wipes. I'll carry a little bit of triple antibiotic, or the silvasulfidine. I'll usually carry it more than I will like a Neosporin or something like that.
Yeah.
And then just a small baggie of like various assorted meds. If I'm going to a place where I know there's a lot of elevation gains up and down, or it's really rocky, I may throw a SAM splint in just for good measure. Um, yeah, that's probably the bulk of it.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't get too crazy with the backpacking piece, because if it's
yeah.
most of that stuff, I can get stabilized out whatever I'm going to have to do, and if I have to push the button, I have to push the button if it's something that's bad. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff too that out there, if because a lot of times it's just me, so if all of a sudden, I
Same.
need CPR in the middle of the woods, there's not going to be anybody there to give it to me anyway.
Right.
Um, so
Right. And yeah, and with that in mind, the CPR part. I mean, even in pre-hospital situations, like when we're
sure,
in the ambulance, where we have all that stuff, all the drugs that we need, all the cardiac monitor and stuff. I mean, even then, we still don't have the best. Sad to say, the best outcome just because of the situation. It's not
sure,
because of a lack
sure,
of training. It's not
absolutely.
because of a lack of equipment or supplies or whatever. It's just because of the situation. So
Yeah, it's the environment you're in and what you're dealing with.
that's the one thing you have to think about is
Yeah,
that when you're going out here, there are risks that you're going to have to assume and
sure,
take on
absolutely.
because you're not in a controlled environment. But that
No,
was the whole but that was the whole reason to have you on the show today, Ray, was
yeah,
because you have a lot of knowledge. Obviously, you have survival school, you have your hiking school as well, that can offer a lot to a lot of people if they're in this area. Right now, he doesn't have any online stuff going on right now,
yeah,
and kind of use your precautions on a lot of the online stuff. Some of it's really great,
sure.
but
It is.
you can't beat hands-on.
No.
Let me touch this equipment or let me touch this item and do this particular procedure. You can't beat that.
No, you can't.
Online
You
training.
can't.
Online training. I mean, we're 45 minutes away from each other, but we're able to broadcast like this, and it's pretty amazing. But it doesn't mean the same thing as us being in person and being able to interact that way. So just think about that stuff.
It's hard to replace dirt time.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And like we've said in this whole broadcast, I mean, if you're out there and you're listening, you're watching, whatever, the more time you get in the outdoors, just like anything else, just like, whatever job you do out there, when you were a beginner, you didn't know anything about what you were doing. But as you got more and more exposed to that, you became better and you learned. And you probably partnered up with people that worked with you or that you knew that could help you do this particular task or do this better. That's how that works. Because we have a lot of students come through in EMS at my particular station that I work at, and so that's what I tell them. I was like, this is your first exposure to this field, and so you suck. I mean, in a nice way, but because they just don't have any exposure to it. I'm
Sure.
I try to tell them, it's like, hey, this is your first ride out, your second ride out ever on an ambulance. You don't know anything, and that's how all of us were when we started. We were all little babies, basically, when we started our career or whatever we did.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
We all start out somewhere, and I think the danger a lot of times is when you're early on, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the dangerous piece to a lot of it. If you can kind of
Yeah.
go into it humble, knowing that, hey, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, as opposed
Sure.
to, I've seen this on YouTube, I'm going to wing it. I know how to do this. Sometimes we get sideways.
Yeah, I watched Craig or Ray's videos on YouTube, so I'm an expert now. Yeah, that doesn't quite happen like that, folks. But we're happy to after this is posted, we're happy to answer any questions you have. So post comments, questions, whatever. Send us emails. There's a couple more questions for Ray, and then we'll kind of let him once again kind of promote his school and websites just to get some interest there in case anybody's in the area and wants to take some of his classes. So what's your favorite any type of gear? It doesn't have to be technology or whatever. What is your favorite type of gear or your favorite piece of gear that you?
Yeah, it's like asking a parent what their favorite child is.
I know.
That's kind of hard to dial down. It honestly, for me, we try out so much stuff with the survival school.
Yeah.
That our gear bags, it's a constant state of flux. What I love today changes 6 months from now. I have things that I gravitate to more often than other products, but they kind of all sort of fit in the categories. Like for my hydration, I'm carrying a Sawyer filter when I'm backpacking, but I day hike with a Grail. I hike with the Grail just because it's easy. It's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to backpack with it, but it's easy.
Right.
But when it comes to the hammocks, I can kind of be a hammock snob. I've gotten spoiled with my Ridge Runner from War Bonnet because it's a bridge hammock. It's nice and flat and easy, but so stuff. It changes for me, honestly, constantly. I don't know that because of the school, I've intentionally not gotten attached to a lot of pieces of gear because we're constantly rotating stuff out, and we're in them all the time. So it's a state of flux.
Sure.
My favorite piece of gear is the next piece of gear.
There you go. That's a good answer. Let's see. Let me see if I can. Let's see. I'm going to try to share your. There we go. Let's see if I can share this on the screen here. Are you able to see that? Yeah. So this is Ray's main. Are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Ray? I think we lost Ray, but anyway, this is his main site here. This is the Texas Survival School. So I don't know if you can see. There you are. Can you hear me? So here's his survival school website. If you want to check that out, Texas Survival School. There's links to this in the description. The other one, you hear me now?
Oh, I hear you now. Yes.
Okay. I don't know why it cut off on the sound there. I'm still learning again to use this
Yeah.
this software. But anyway, I was showing them your website for the Texas Survival School, and I put a link in the description on YouTube so they can see that.
Okay. Cool.
And let me show the other one real quick, which is if I can find it. There we go.
Hike a lot.
Yeah, Hike a Lot. Hopefully you can still hear me. Yeah. So this particular site is hike-alot.com, and he's got classes on there as well. The other site, texassurvivalschool.com. You can check those out at your leisure. Did you lose audio again on that?
I did.
Okay, I don't know why it's losing audio, but anyway, I just showed them your two main sites. Is there any other place on the web you want them to check you out on?
Not really. Each one of them's got a business page. Each one's got a Facebook group. As far as within Facebook, they have a business page and a group. They're pretty easy to find. I don't do a lot of the other social media outlets.
Right.
That's kind of, like I said, I'm not a big social media person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But you can definitely catch Ray on both of those other sites. He has training going on all the time.
Pretty much.
Reach out to him there through email. I think I put a link to the Hike a Lot, which is like your main YouTube, down in the description of this video, so you can check that out and go to check out his videos. He puts out a lot more content than I do because he has more time that he's able to do that. However, he's figured that out. I don't know. He's working full time and running these two other things. So your time management is just
Craig,
much better than me.
Oh, I just give up on sleep.
Oh well.
Give up on
Sometimes
sleep.
I do.
I'm thoroughly
as well.
disappointed. I'm thoroughly disappointed because I didn't get a single question about. Don't you know that's not how you spell a lot in Hike a Lot?
No, right.
I was fully expecting that one. Everyone seems to always miss that it's an abbreviation for Arkansas, Louisiana.
Well, I
Texas.
already knew that, but I mean, that is a good question, a good thing to point out. If you're wondering, audience out there, it is spelled a lot because it's Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. So, which is where we focus a lot of the clientele for for this area for him. But anyway, thanks so much, Ray, for being on here. We appreciate you coming on and talking to the audience about getting prepared, and hopefully that they've picked out some gems that because there's a lot of gems thrown out there today. Hopefully they picked out some that were very helpful to them and kind of start that ball rolling of getting more information about being outside. So thanks everybody.
I appreciate you having me on, man.
We will see y'all out there on the trail. Thanks.